Thank you for joining us yet again on our news desk on QTV. The headlines. Konkola Copper Mines has assured the government that it will not cut jobs at its sites as a result of the new tax regime. Expelled PF Bahati Member of Parliament Harry Kalaba will not challenge his expulsion from the ruling party. The Human Rights Commission has recommended that criminal charges be brought against all the police officers involved in the operation to quell the students' unrest at Unza, leading to the death of a student. Here now is the news in detail. Konkola Copper Mines has assured the government that there will be no job cuts at its sites as a result of the new tax regime announced in the 2019 national budget. Speaking during a consultative and information exchange meeting held at the Ministry of Finance, KCM Acting Chief Executive Officer Venkatesan Girida informed a high-level Zambian government that Vendata Group Chairman Aniu Agao and Vendata Group Chief Executive Officer Srinivasan Venkatesan are passionate about the success of the KCM, hence their instruction to management to approach the subject of security of employment tenure with due care and compassion for the citizens of Zambia. Mr. Garidia says KCM undertakes a constructively engage key stakeholders such as government, trade unions, the media, local communities, stakeholders in a respectful manner to ensure that the company contributes to the growth of the economy on a sustained basis. He also emphasized that the mining company is renewing its focus on Konkola Deep Mine in Chilelabombwe and would ensure further investment in the short to medium term. Mr. Grida states that the actions are designed to sustain and create jobs, grow the economy, and contribute more to the country's treasury while effectively implementing the asset and liability management program. Speaking at the same meeting, Minister of Finance Margaret Manakatwe thanked KCM for choosing the path of dialogue and the proactive approach in reviewing mine operations, ensuring compliance, sustaining job creation, and contributing to the country's growth. Mrs. Manakatwe appealed to KCM to implement her commitment made in the meeting to timely pay local suppliers. She also expressed concern that the upward trend in imported concentrates, in contrast to the downward trend in locally mined concentrates, was a worrying scenario that creates the impression that KCM has been focusing more on trading than local mine development. And Labour Minister Joyce Mukoko implored mining companies to ensure that the government policy on minimum wages for all their operational units and subcontracts is complied without fail. And Mrs. Mukoko also called on KCM to demonstrate stability in operations by deploying management teams whose tenure at the company assure the government and other stakeholders the additional investment project which they had consistently announced became operational. Expelled PF Bahati Member of Parliament Harry Kalaba says he will not challenge his expulsion from the ruling party. Addressing a media briefing in Lusaka, Mr. Kalaba says he has moved on to take up the position of president in the Democratic Party. He says he will not recontest the Bahati seat and neither will his party participate in the by-election, as his focus is on mobilizing the party in readiness for the 2021 general election. Mr. Kalaba says he also wants to save the courts the drama of adjournments that characterize cases involving petitions. Meanwhile, Mr. Kalaba says Zambians should start thinking of changing government in 2021. He says failure to do so, the country is doomed owing to the current happenings, the country where leaders' interests are self-service.
It is clear that my resignation from cabinet amidst high-level corruption by the government's top leadership is the reason for my expulsion from the Patriotic Front. Sure. I have not and have never committed any crime. The only crime was to speak against corruption and to side with the people who are the absolute owners of the resources being plundered. Today, the bells are tolling for my departure from PF. The PF has proven to be a party of intolerance, a party for self-serving and enrichment, and a party which abates grand corruption and theft by those in positions of trust and responsibility. I choose to be on the side of the people. The very people who had sent me to Parliament, the same people who motivated me to join politics so I can be their servant and help to better their livelihoods and to speak on their behalf in Parliament and in Cabinet. I leave the PF today, not because I have stolen or fallen short of execution of any duties, but because what the PF is standing for today does not resonate with the wishes of the people.
And Mr. Kalaba says the church-led national dialogue reconciliation process is better placed to resolve existing conflicts in the country. He says he is disturbed when he hears people castigating the church for playing their role when the whole country is very much aware of how instrumental the church has been to the development of the nation and conflict resolution.
You will recall that in the early 2000s, the millennium point, the church was instrumental in ensuring that the debt burden was written off. It was the church. You also recall that in 1990, at the peak of intra-party democracy, the church spearheaded the dialogue process. And Dr. Kaunda and Frederick Chiluba and all the other colleagues who were part of the process met under the auspices of the church at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. The church has a track record. The church has got no feigned interest in what they're doing. The church has always been magnanimous in several ways than one. And sometimes I get startled that someone can even point a finger at the church and accuse them of all kinds of things. Let's be fair to men and women in the cloth. They have already given their lives to humanity. Their interests are not our interests. So I still insist that the church is better placed, Adora, to lead the dialogue process.
The Human Rights Commission has recommended that appropriate criminal charges be brought against all the police officers, including senior officers, who are in charge of the operation to quell the students' unrest at the University of Zambia Great East Road campus between the 4th and the 5th of October 2018, resulting in the death of a student. In a summary statement of its investigation's findings on the UNZA students' unrest, the Commission says the late Vespas Sumunjila died as a result of suffocation due to carbon monoxide intoxication, as confirmed by the medical evidence through a post-mortem. The Commission says from all the evidence submitted by a wide range of witnesses during its investigations, it can be concluded that the invasion of the UNZA Great East Road campus premises and subsequent throwing of suspected hand grenades and firing of tear gas canisters in the students' rooms by the police caused the death of Vespas, the injury of other students, as well as the loss of and damage to university and students' property. It says it is clear from the totality of the evidence obtained that the police acted in an extremely brutal manner, depicting a combative warfare situation against unarmed students who at that time no longer posed any real danger or violence to the police officers or any other member of the public or property. The Commission further states that the state, being the primary duty bearer of human rights with trial obligation of respecting, protecting and fulfilling the rights of all people in Zambia, should be held vicariously liable for the action of the police officers who are its agents. It also called on Vespas Sumunjila's estate to consider instituting legal proceedings against the state and the police officers involved for the arbitrary loss of a constitutionally guaranteed and birthright to life in order to secure adequate compensation. The Commission says the Zambia Police Command should own up and take responsibility over the death of Vespas and injuries sustained by Everentine Chongo, Trudy Kalimbwe and others, as well as for the loss of property. It has further recommended that government continues paying all medical and other expenses towards the treatment of Everentine, who sustained a fractured lower spine resulting her paralysis, until her full recovery and rehabilitation, and compensate her for the serious injuries she suffered. Zambia has dropped 9 places in ranking on the 2018 Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, CPI. From the 180 countries gold under the CPI, Zambia is now ranked number 105 after scoring 35 out of 100 points from the 37 out of 100 points it scored in 2017. Announcing Zambia's corruption status in Lusaka, Transparency International Zambia (TIZ) President Ruben Lifuka has disclosed that 17 countries ranked higher than Zambia in the sub-Saharan Africa. He states that it is the first time in 1 year that Zambia has dropped by 2 points and 9 places on the CPI. Mr. Lifuka states that given this performance, it is evident that corruption has become a major challenge for Zambia, adding that something needs to be done about it.
We should also strengthen the law enforcement agencies, the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Drug Enforcement Commission, Zambia Police, the Anti-Money Laundering Unit, all, you name them. If we are serious about fighting corruption, let's put money in these institutions, let's put the technical assistance that is needed in order for them to be effective in the work that they do. I do hope that by now the Deputy Director General is here. She'll tell us that she has a commission, because we cannot imagine an important organization like the SEC going on for so many months without commissioners. It is scandalous, so to say. We would like to see that they have the necessary support. We would like to see further and better media reforms. This should not be about stifling media activity. It's about promoting media activity. We would like to see citizens being given the opportunity to engage, to hold their elected leaders accountable. When we ask questions about what government is doing, we're not doing that because we want to be in politics, but because those leaders are spending our money. We have every right. When we ask questions about the Michael Chilufya toll gate and how much it costs, Honorable Chitokela should not come out and tell us we know nothing, so engineers should explain to us what the specifications were. That is public money. Whether that money is obtained as a loan or is coming as a grant, government is exercising leadership for and on behalf of the people. So we want to see responsible leadership if we're going to fight win this fight against corruption.
Speaking at the same event, United Nations Development Programme UNDP Country Director Mandisa Mashologu affirmed the UN's support to Zambia's fight against corruption. Ms. Mashologu says the UNDP considers Zambia's ranking on the 2018 Transparency International CPI as a call for the country to renew its commitment to the fight against the vice.
The call by both governments and stakeholders has been that duty bearers must ensure that we do leave no one behind. I think I can echo President Edgar Lungu's words in his address to Parliament in 2018, in which he stated, "We all have a patriotic duty, not just to express outrage against corruption, but to do more to combat this scourge." Indeed, feeble and fragmented efforts to fight corruption will, to the contrary, imply that we are leaving many Zambians behind and that we will ultimately fail to reach the collective development goals as set out in the 7th National Development Plan and Zambia's Vision 2030. Globally, we as UNDP stand committed to address fraud and corruption and reinforce the UN's zero tolerance against corruption, as these are contrary to our UN core values and our collective agenda for development. UNDP Zambia, together with our sister agencies, stand ready to support anti-corruption efforts that accelerate progress towards the SDGs.
President Edgar Lungu has urged artists to use their talents to unite the country as opposed to causing division and moral decay amongst citizens. Speaking when the National Arts Council NAC paid a courtesy call on him at State House, President Lungu expressed happiness that actors and actresses have gained recognition and are getting paid for their work during his tenure. The head of state emphasized the need to depoliticize arts, stating that art should not be politicized but should be used to unite the country. President Lungu also expressed gratitude to Minister of Tourism and Arts Charles Banda for pronouncing arts in his ministry. Speaking earlier, National Arts Council Chairperson Patrick Samwibila said the council had honored the president as the 2019 Champion of the Arts. This follows the council's recognition of President Lungu's dedication to the development and promotion of the arts, as evidenced by his public pronouncements. He says the pronouncements have shown that the head of state has put the arts as an integral part of the government's economic transformation agenda. Mr. Samwibila said 2019, being the year of the arts in Zambia, will help the council celebrate the Silver Jubilee under the theme Celebrating and Investing in the Arts. Acting Permanent Secretary to the Cabinet, Acting Secretary to the Cabinet, Patrick Kangwa, has directed all public service officers to acquaint themselves with the Public Finance Management Act No. 1 of 2018. And Mr. Kangwa has warned that officers will be held liable individually for any financial misconduct in the civil service. He also stressed that it was imperative that controlling officers ensure that officers under their command understand and cooperate with the Attorney General's chambers in carrying out their mandate. Zanis reports that the Acting Secretary to the Cabinet said this in Lusaka during the Ministry of Justice sensitization workshop for controlling officers and senior government officials in Lusaka.
At the end of this workshop, I sincerely hope that you, the participants, would have seized the importance of the work of the Ministry of Justice and the role that you play in the work of the Ministry, and how best the relationship between yourselves and the Ministry of Justice can be improved. We hope that this workshop will not only be informative to you, but that ideas may be exchanged as to how best the Ministry can also serve the needs of its client ministries and departments. Additionally, at the end of the workshop, you must understand that there will be consequences on officers who choose to ignore their responsibilities, or officers who cause the state to lose finances through their actions or inactions under the Public Finance Management Act No. 1 of 2018.
And the Acting Minister of Justice, Stephen Kampiongo, disclosed that the government is indebted to the tune of over 3 billion kwacha towards payment of compensation and awards. He says this necessitated the Ministry of Justice to reorient sister ministries on the need to observe the principles of fairness in the delivery of justice. Mr. Kampiongo, who is also a Shuangandu lawmaker, has stated that the training will be spread to other parts of the country in order to reorient all controlling officers.
Despite the above-mentioned challenges, the Minister of Justice remains the sole coordinator in the administration of justice. The role it plays is pivotal in that it remains the principal legal advisor to the government. My ministry remains guided by its mission statement, which states, and I quote, to facilitate the dispensation of justice and enhancement of good governance. End of quote. However, this cannot be achieved if the executors of government policy do not comply with the laid down policies as well as the law. Indeed, even Cabinet, chaired by His Excellency the President, is guided at all times. And that's why we see that the Attorney General is always present in Cabinet meetings.
Meanwhile, Attorney General Likando Kalaluka disclosed that the Attorney General's chambers are served with an average of 15 to 20 writs of summons and statement of claims per week from institutions and individuals seeking some form of compensation against the state.
It is important for the delegates to note that our chambers are served with an average of about 15 to 20 writs of summons. By writs of summons, we mean new cases in the various courts per week. So the Attorney General's chambers is served with new cases where government is being sued, and this number, 15 to 20 on average each week. So you can imagine how many cases we have in a year or in a month. All these are seeking compensation against the government, and these claims are not only within the boundaries of Lusaka, but are commenced from various courts of law throughout the country.
Minister of National Guidance and Religious Affairs, Godfrida Sumaili, has cautioned people in the country to be careful with what they communicate, especially in this era of digital media and information and communication technology, where a message can reach millions of people at the press of a button. Speaking during the commemoration of the United Nations International Day of the Victims of the Holocaust, Reverend Sumaili says fake news has become rife these days, hence the need to be careful with what to forward. She says if a person cannot prove something, it is better they do not forward any news, stressing that this does not only apply to the media personnel, but every individual who has access to a cell phone or internet. Reverend Sumaili adds that the Holocaust teaches that if people promote hatred and advance prejudices against one another, the results can be violence, conflict, and death. The minister has since called on the youth in the country to refuse to be used as tools to injure other people simply because they are from a different group, as has sometimes been seen during political campaigns and elections.
Bringing this issue back home in Zambia, I want to urge all our people to unite and work together across tribal, racial, religious, partisan, and other lines that we consider different from the person next to you. Zambia is known as an oasis of peace in the region and Africa as a whole, due to the tranquility that has existed among our 73 tribes and ethnic groups. We need to cherish the peace that we enjoy, as this country's prosperity depends on it. This is in line with our national values and principles. I call on the youth to refuse to be used as tools to injure other people simply because they are different from one group, as we have sometimes seen during political campaigns and elections. We are brothers and sisters who should coexist and focus on what should unite us, being human beings and being Zambian.
Speaking at the same event, United Nations Resident Coordinator Janet Rogan says the Holocaust was a specifically terrifying lesson for humanity because it shows how far hatred and fear can drive people. She says it is therefore necessary to do everything possible to guard against such ideologies so that such crimes can never again be perpetrated in the presence of the people's collective knowledge.
For what reason could such terrible, unthinkable atrocities be done by even one single human being to another, let alone to the millions who were eventually killed? They were done because these people belonged to groups who were in some way different from the ideologies of those in power, and because those in power had enough power, they believed, to make their ideologies a reality by exterminating those people of difference. That was their plan, to exterminate, to wipe out 100%, to remove from the face of the earth all those people of difference. How unthinkable to you and me, but not to them. How arrogant their absolute belief in their superiority. For this reason, it is necessary for us not only to remember the people who were mercilessly murdered during the Holocaust, during the genocides, but also to think hard about the reason why they were killed. To think about the general population was incited against those people of difference. And it is necessary to do everything possible to teach ourselves and our children how to defend ourselves against such evil ideologies so that such crimes can never, ever again be perpetrated in our presence or in our collective knowledge.
And the Council for Zambia Jury Chairperson Simon Zuka says there is need now more than ever to unite the fight for universal values and build a world of equality for everyone.
The one event which our people are hardly aware of is the Holocaust. And this is why we're here. We're here to fill this gap. Now, I have mentioned this before, that the Holocaust is not well known, even amongst senior civil servants. And I'll give you an example. The Minister of Tourism went to Israel, and while there, he was asked whether we had a Holocaust museum. And he said no, but when he came back, I and some colleagues of mine were called to the Secretary of the Cabinet to see whether we have such a museum or not. And the answer was not, but we had a museum in Livingston where reference was made to the Holocaust and some information was given about the Holocaust.
Local Government Minister Vincent Mwale has launched the Integrated Development Planning Guidelines with a call on all stakeholders in the local authority to work together so as to meet the needs of the people in communities at a timely manner. The IDP is a tool to guide development partners at a level in achieving sustainable development at the level without leaving anyone behind and enhancing local government capacities for development. The over 2 million euros guideline is meant to be used within a period of 36 months in 10 local authorities on the Copper Belt, Lusaka and Northern provinces. Speaking during the launch of the IDPS, Local Government Minister Vincent Mwale says the need for the preparation of IDPS is in line with the provision of the Urban and Regional Planning Act No. 3 of 2015 and the 7th National Development Plan.
I mean, planned settlements that just emerged because people pounced on someone's land some time back should not be the case in the newly created district. I think they should start afresh. These guidelines will then be able to help them, come up with proper IDPs that relate to land use. But as we see, IDP does help in everything, not just issues of land use. Budgeting, as we said, management and decision making by all sectors in a particular area. It places greater emphasis on the integration of socio-economic planning and spatial planning, the issues we talked about. It is therefore imperative that all actors work together to meet the needs of the people and ensure that resources are targeted in the area of greatest need, and that inefficiencies and duplications are eliminated through these integrated development plans. In line with national priorities, all local authorities should prioritize the preparation of integrated development plans for their respective districts. To assist local authorities prepare IDPs, my ministry has therefore prepared these guidelines with the support of the cooperating partners. These guidelines have been carefully developed to assist councils and key stakeholders in undertaking integrated development planning in districts. These guidelines are not targeted for use by one sector or stakeholder. I would like to implore all local authorities and other stakeholders to use these guidelines to help them prepare good integrated development plans that will improve access services for those in greatest need and to help local authorities work with other partners to promote social and economic development in all parts of the country.
And representing the European Union, who are one of the major partners and funders of the guidelines, Gianluca Azzoni says the European Union is hopeful that the launched IDPS will provide methodological support to share a shared vision for local development planning, reconciling priorities for land use and productive activities. Meanwhile, Commonwealth Local Government Forum Regional Program Manager Nyasha Shambengavi, who are also the implementing partners, pledged the organization's commitment to ensuring that development is taken to the communities by the local authorities in an adequate and timely manner.
Integrated development planning provides a framework for the implementation of global and national policies, as well as addressing the needs and priorities of communities at the local level. This is why achieving sustainable development is more than ever dependent on the ability of local governments to to promote integrated and inclusive development.
The European Union recognizes the important role that decentralization, local governance and local development play in achieving development outcomes around the world. In Zambia, we are supporting the Local Government Association of Zambia and the Commonwealth Local Government Forum in partnership with the Ministry of Local Government to enhance local government capacities for development. Central to this support is the strengthening of competences of 10 local authorities in the Copperbelt, Northern and Lusaka provinces to plan in an effective and participatory manner through the use of the integrated development planning approach. The project therefore assists these targeted local authorities to develop their first integrated development plans. Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, the need to move away from the sectoral-based planning models of the past that have so often led to fragmented and incoherent outcomes cannot be overemphasized. And this is given the fast process of urbanization that Zambia is experiencing, given the challenge of climate change and environmental sustainability. Integrated planning is no longer an option, but a necessity.
Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit DMMU National Coordinator Chandakawe has assured the Zambia National Service that the government will release the 30 million kwacha towards the completion of construction works on the Simon Mwewa Lane Market along Lumumba Road. Mr. Kabwe says government is expected to spend about 70 million kwacha to construct the market, of which 40 million kwacha has been utilized. He says the construction of the market will cushion the impact of the Lusaka City Market fire victims and street vending. Speaking to journalists shortly after inspecting the ongoing construction works, Mr. Kabwe says the market, once completed, will provide more than 400 trading spaces. Details are in this report.
It happened in 2017 when many of the traders were woken from their sleep by calls from some traders who had got wind of the inferno and alerted them to go and evacuate their merchandises before the fire would do more damage. Many of the traders at Lusaka City Market were inconsolable, while their family members, friends and sympathizers wore gloomy faces as they bemoaned huge losses. Some traders fainted on seeing their shops reduced to ashes. The Lusaka City Market fire affected hundreds of traders who had spent years at the market engraving out a daily living. This, on the other hand, forced some traders to trade from the streets due to lack of spaces in some markets in the province. But last year, government started constructing the Simon Mwewa Market along Lumumba Road. The construction of this market will cushion the impact of the Lusaka City Market fire victims and street vending. Newly appointed Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit National Coordinator Chandakawe led a delegation of permanent secretaries to inspect the ongoing construction works at Simon Mwewa Market.
And true to what we've seen, I'm sure with my friends, we ensure that all the procurement processes are done. So far, I have approved all the emergency materials that my colleagues need on site, such as the retrofittings, the terrazzo, have approved. So by tomorrow, we should be able to deliver all the materials for our main uniform to finish this project. It's very important for our people in the informal sector.
Captain Mavuto Lungu, who is site engineer, shares the challenges Zambia National Service is facing because this project was supposed to be completed after 6 months from the date of construction commencement last year.
The second one is actually flow of material. The flow of material has been erratic, mostly due to funding. The other challenge is the weather. Particularly the rainy season has affected the task force in completing the project. For instance, maybe on a particular day we target to reach a certain percentage and then it starts raining, we definitely have to stop the works and resume immediately after the rain stops. So that has actually affected our progress.
And Lusaka Provincial Permanent Secretary is happy to see the progress being done so far.
The quality of works are very good, and we are hoping that they can stick to the terms from the sector themselves, that by May they hand over at least the big market, and let the smaller market can be handed over later. You know, issues of cholera are very prominent in the south, so we want most of our people to start trading from designated areas where the sanitation is good. We've seen the allocations of which is being built is 36 toilets, which is very good. And this will also be dedicated at this smaller market. So we are keen and very eager to have this market ready so that our people can move from here and then streets in Lusaka can be clean once more.
But the question that traders are asking is, will this project be completed on time?
The total cost of this market is 70 million. So we have a balance of 30 million, which will soon be found by the Ministry of Finance, and we'll bring that money in order for us to complete the market. You are aware that we've given ourselves as a target to complete this market latest by May, and that we want to stick to our target. The PS for Lusaka province has really emphasized that he wants us to see that we complete the market. Secondly, we've created employment, not just that for the workers who are here. We've created over 120 jobs for the young people who are working with the defense personnel. We have 125 defense personnel working here, plus 100 plus civilians who are helping the personnel.
But for Lusaka Province Minister Boma Lusambo, who also inspected the works, revealed that in his next inspection, he will invite opposition leaders to appreciate some developmental projects taking place in the province.
Next time, the next tour, I will invite Hakainde Hichilema, I will invite Chipimo, I will invite Nevers Mumba and the other opposition party leaders to see what we are doing. Because the criticism which they are offering outside there, it is not there. We are doing a lot. We are doing a lot. We have invested a lot. We have invested in agriculture. We have invested in infrastructure. So we want them to see the things which we are doing.
Reporting for QTV News, my name is Favorite Kalando in Lusaka.
Copperbelt Province Permanent Secretary Bright Nundwe has advised local contractors in the region to carry out quality works. Mr. Nundwe noted that government has already created an enabling environment for local contractors to participate on the market through a presidential directive that 20% of any contract awarded to foreign contractors should be reserved for local contracts. He said the onus was now on the local contractors to rise to the occasion and produce quality works. Zanisi Nindola reports that Mr. Nundwe said this when he visited Buildcon Investments Limited today. The permanent secretary, meanwhile, commended Buildcon Investment Limited for exceptional works that the contractor has been carrying out in the country. And Buildcon Investment Limited Chief Executive Officer Moses Mubanga said local contractors are aware that they will only get contracts based purely on quality of work and seriousness they attach to the contracts. Mr. Mubanga has since advised his fellow local contractors to seize the opportunities that have been created by government.
This is a piece of advice that I want to give to the local contractors. Yes, we need the foreign contractors, but I can tell you, the president has placed high premium to empower the local contractors. And let the local contractors not disappoint government. We know there are certain technical jobs that may not be done by certain Zambians, but where you have the capacity as Zambians, please do your job properly. Don't abandon the contracts.
What is very, very important is the ability to take on some of these opportunities, like the local contractor capacity building program. We are so much alive to the fact that
Zambia has recorded steady progress towards actualizing its position in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, which is expected to expand intra-African trade. However, stakeholders have expressed different views on how Zambia is expected to benefit from the enhanced regional integration market. And Zanisis Michelo Luwinda reports that only 44 out of the 55 African Union member states have so far signed the consolidated text of AfCFTA. The Barclays Bank Zambia has welcomed plans by the Bank of Zambia to introduce the primary dealership in the sale of government bonds. Barclays head of markets Stanley Tamele says the model will lead to Zambia's vast economic growth. Mr. Tamele has told QTV News that the model has proven to be a success in countries such as South Africa and Ghana. He explains that a primary dealer is a firm that buys government securities directly from a government with the intention of reselling them to others, thus acting as a market maker for government. Mr. Tamele says once this comes into effect, it will attract a lot of investors, as it gives an investor hope of having their investments secured.
In Zambia, we've got an interesting example, and this is the primary dealership, which Bank of Zambia, working hand in hand with Ministry of Finance, is poised to introduce later on this year. With the coming in of primary dealership, the distribution process for government bonds changes to one where that market is open to every single investor, but rather it is restricted to primary dealers who then create a secondary market, create liquidity and pricing in that particular market. And it's a model that is used in a lot of advanced economies. That model is used in countries like South Africa, right here in sub-Saharan Africa. It's used in countries like Ghana. These are both countries which are part of this index. That effort in there did, in a sense, also contribute to our improvement as Zambia in the scoring on the pillar of market depth. So that's just like a case in example of where some deliberate effort has been taken by the regulators, strides are taken, and we see an improvement coming through. What that does to an offshore investor, they'll be able to see that if there's a primary dealership system, then there must be a fair amount of liquidity, and this is the market that we can probably consider participating in.
That item concludes our news, but before we go, here is a recap of stories in the headlines. Konkola Copper Mines has assured the government that it will not cut jobs at its sites as a result of the new tax regime. Expelled PF Bahati Member of Parliament Harry Kalava will not challenge his expulsion from the ruling party. The Human Rights Commission has recommended that criminal charges be brought against all those police officers involved in the operation to quell the students' unrest at Unza, leading to the death of a student. That's it. Thank you so much for being with us. Bye-bye. God bless.